She thought she lived alone until her doorbell camera told the truth. Before we dive in, if you've got a Ring camera, check your footage tonight. Trust me, you might not like what you see. Like, comment and subscribe before it's too late. The police arrived at 4:27 a.m. The street was silent except for the crackle of their radios and the hum of cruiser engines. A narrow two-story house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, its porch light flickering in the early dawn. The homeowner, a 32-year-old nurse named Melissa Carter, stood barefoot on the front lawn, shaking, clutching her phone against her chest. She'd just watched something she couldn't unsee. Hours earlier, she'd come home from her night shift, exhausted, tossing her bag on the couch. She noticed her phone had a notification. Motion detected at your front door, 2:54 a.m. Normally, she ignored those alerts. Stray cats, passing cars, maybe a gust of wind. But that night, curiosity won. She opened the Ring app and froze. The video showed a man standing perfectly still on her porch. He wasn't knocking or ringing the bell, just watching. His face was hidden beneath the shadow of a hood, his posture unnervingly still. He stood there for almost 6 minutes before stepping out of frame and disappearing toward the side of her house. Melissa's heart pounded. She immediately called the non-emergency police line. Officers came, scanned her property, and left 15 minutes later, assuring her it was probably a prank. But as she tried to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, she decided to review more footage. That's when she saw it, movement from inside the house. At 3:17 a.m., the interior motion sensor in her living room detected activity. The lights flicked on for a second, then off. She was at work during that time. The timestamp didn't lie. Someone had been moving inside her home. Panic rising, Melissa checked every lock, every window. Everything was sealed tight. She even checked the attic. Nothing. Her mind spun with possibilities. A glitch? A hacker? But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. 2 days later, she installed additional cameras in the hallway, kitchen, and basement door. She wanted proof. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Then came the third night, the footage that made national headlines. The timestamp read 2:41 a.m. The front door camera clicked on again. The same hooded figure appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him, a second shape moved in the dark, smaller, quicker. They both vanished into the side yard again. Melissa, trembling, rewound the footage frame by frame, and then she saw it. The basement light turned on, from the inside. She called 911 again, but by the time officers arrived, the house was empty. No sign of forced entry. No prints. Just a faint, wet footprint leading from the basement door toward the kitchen and ending near the vent shaft. Detectives were brought in that morning. They tore apart the basement, removing old panels and insulation. Behind one of the walls, they found what looked like a hidden crawl space. Small, dark, and lined with discarded food wrappers and blankets. Someone had been living there for weeks. But as one of the officers leaned in with his flashlight, he noticed something else on the far side of the crawl space. Another tunnel, dug straight into the dirt, leading deeper beneath the foundation. He turned to the others, pale-faced. "This isn't just her house," he muttered. "This tunnel. It goes under the whole street." And that's when they heard it. A faint, metallic clatter echoing from inside the darkness, followed by the sound of someone breathing. The officers froze. Melissa's phone began vibrating with another notification. "Motion detected. Basement camera." What that footage revealed would help change the case forever. The footage played in real time, and what it captured made the room fall silent. At first it was just static. Then from the basement camera, a shadow shifted across the concrete floor. A hand, pale and trembling, reached out from the darkness of the crawlspace. Another followed. Then slowly, a man crawled into view. Thin, filthy, eyes darting toward the ceiling. His lips were moving, whispering something that the mic barely caught. Melissa's breathing quickened as detectives leaned closer. The man muttered, "Don't wake her. Not yet." Officer Daniels immediately ordered everyone to clear the house. Within minutes, the property was surrounded by flashing red and blue lights. A SWAT team moved in, weapons drawn, sweeping every room. But when they reached the basement, the crawlspace was empty. The tunnel they'd seen earlier now ended in a wall of collapsed dirt and wooden beams, freshly disturbed. Whoever was in there had just sealed himself off and disappeared underground. Detective Harris, a veteran investigator from the department's burglary division, stayed behind to study the footage again. He noted something odd. In the first video, the man's movements were jerky, almost panicked. But in this one, he seemed deliberate, as if he knew exactly where every camera was. Someone who'd been inside long enough to memorize the layout. Meanwhile, Melissa was taken to a hotel for safety. Her nerves were shattered. She hadn't slept in days. Every creak in the hallway, every hum from the air conditioner made her jump. During a police interview the next morning, she mentioned something she'd never thought much about before. Small things that had gone missing over the past month. A half-empty milk carton, a folded blanket she thought she'd misplaced. Her cat acting strange, staring at corners for minutes at a time. It wasn't random. He'd been living there long before she ever knew it. 2 days later, ground-penetrating radar was brought in to scan beneath the property. What they found stunned everyone. An interconnected system of shallow tunnels beneath 5 houses on the same street. It looked like someone had been using them for years. The team traced the tunnels back to a storm drain exit near an abandoned house 3 blocks away. Inside that property, they discovered a makeshift camp, sleeping bag, flashlights, canned food, and stacks of stolen mail from nearby homes. On the table was an old photo, a young man and an elderly woman smiling in front of the same cul-de-sac Melissa lived on. A quick search of missing persons records revealed his identity. Caleb Turner, a former resident of the neighborhood. He'd vanished 4 years earlier after being evicted when his mother died. Neighbors remembered him as quiet but troubled, sometimes seen wandering the street late at night. The chilling part, his mother's house, the one he'd grown up in, was now Melissa's home. Detectives began piecing the timeline together. After his eviction, Caleb had likely dug tunnels from the storm drain to the basements of several homes, using them to survive unseen. He'd been entering at night to steal food and supplies, but the obsession with his former home seemed to grow. He wasn't just hiding, he was returning. When police released a composite photo and search alert, tips poured in. A grocery clerk from a nearby 24-hour store said she'd seen a man matching Caleb's description 2 nights earlier, buying candles and batteries. Surveillance footage confirmed it. He was still in the area. That night, officers set up a perimeter around the cul-de-sac. Every camera, every vent, every door was watched. But at 2:58 a.m., the power went out across the entire block. The only light came from Melissa's phone screen, glowing in the dark hotel room. Across town, another notification appeared. Motion detected, front door. She opened the live feed. There he was again, standing on her porch, staring directly into the camera. But this time, he wasn't alone. Someone stood just behind him, barely visible in the shadows. A woman, frail, grey-haired, her eyes fixed on the lens as she whispered something impossible. Melissa dropped her phone. Detective Harris, monitoring from the station, froze the footage and zoomed in. The woman's face was pale but unmistakable. It was Caleb's mother. The problem was, she'd been dead for years. The discovery threw the investigation into chaos. Caleb's mother, Ruth Turner, had died of heart failure in 2021. The death certificate, funeral records, and even her grave confirmed it. But the woman in the footage looked unmistakably like her. Same jawline, same silver hair, even the same floral nightgown she was reportedly buried in. Detective Harris ordered a forensic team to re-examine the clip frame by frame. When the footage was digitally enhanced, something far more disturbing emerged. Ruth's face was there, printed. A mask. Behind her, Caleb's eyes could be seen peering through the hollow sockets. He'd recreated his mother's image, wearing it as he moved through the house. The motive was no longer a mystery. Caleb hadn't just been hiding in Melissa's home. He was rebuilding the life he'd lost. He'd set up small shrines in the tunnels, newspaper clippings, candle stubs, and photographs from his childhood. In his mind, his mother's death hadn't ended anything. It had merely pushed him underground. The next 48 hours turned into one of the largest manhunts the town had ever seen. Officers combed every sewer line, every vacant property, even drained portions of the nearby creek. Yet Caleb seemed to vanish into thin air. Then, just when the search was cooling, a 911 call came from a delivery driver. He'd seen movement behind Melissa's house near the storm drain entrance. Within minutes, the area was flooded with squad cars. Harris led the entry team, flashless, light in one hand, pistol in the other, stepping into the foul, narrow pipe that snaked beneath the neighborhood. The deeper they went, the thicker the air became. The walls were lined with carvings, words scratched into the concrete. Home. Mother. Still here. About 50 yards in, they found an opening into a larger chamber. The smell hit them first, decay and damp earth. Then the beam of Harris's flashlight landed on a pile of old furniture, blankets, and photographs nailed to the walls. And there, sitting cross-legged in the center of the room, was Caleb. He didn't flinch when the light hit him. His face was streaked with mud, the rubber mask of his mother resting beside him. In front of him sat a half-eaten can of soup, a small battery-powered lantern, and a stack of letters addressed to Melissa Carter. Harris approached slowly. "Caleb," he said quietly, "you need to come with us." Caleb looked up, his voice calm, almost childlike. "She moved into my house," he whispered. "She took my mother's room. I just wanted to be close again." The officers closed in. Caleb didn't resist as they cuffed him. When he was escorted out, he turned toward the camera lights flashing in the tunnel entrance. "Tell her," he murmured. "I was here first." The case made national news for weeks. "The man in the walls," as headlines called him. Melissa sold the house and moved across the state, refusing interviews. But 1 year later, during renovations, the new owners found something unsettling. Behind the drywall in the basement, tucked inside a small space near the vent, was a camera, still powered, still recording. The footage it held showed Caleb, days before his arrest, looking straight into the lens. His final words were calm, almost rehearsed. "She can leave," he said, "but I'll always know where home is. And if you think this story was disturbing, the next one will." He'll keep you up tonight. Subscribe, if you dare, because some doors, once opened, never close.